Hi, everyone, and welcome to Café IBTTA. I'm Pat Jones. My guest today is Charles Duncan. Charles is the Chief of Compliance, Legislative and Cultural Affairs for the Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission, a position he was appointed to in 2020. Before that, Charles was Director of Legislative Affairs, where he served as the primary legislative and policy advisor for the commission. Before joining the commission in 2015, Charles served as the special assistant to the Pennsylvania Senate Democratic Appropriations Chair and was instrumental in the development of the Commonwealth's annual budget and spending priorities. Charles serves as a board member designee on the Pennsylvania State Employees Retirement System and has previously worked for Temple University, the Pennsylvania House of Representatives, and the Philadelphia Housing Authority. Charles holds a Bachelor of Arts from St. Joseph's University, a Master of Business Administration from Louisiana State University, and a Juris Doctorate from Widener University Commonwealth Law School. Charles, welcome to Café IBTTA. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you for having me, Pat. I look forward to the conversation.
Well, this is Café IBTTA, where we drink coffee and talk about things that are interesting, relevant, uplifting, and fun. And we are always taking your questions and comments, and we want to get started right away. So, an interesting personal note here. Charles is a member of Kappa Alpha Psi Incorporated, one of the Divine Nine Black Greek letter organizations. So, in the chat function, I would ask you to type a word or phrase that expresses your thoughts or feelings about Kappa Alpha Psi, the Divine Nine, or any Greek letter organization that's close to your heart. Tell us, what are your thoughts and feelings about Kappa Alpha Psi or any of the Greek letter organizations?
It'd be great to hear from you guys, and whoever may also be part of Black Greek letter organization or any Greek letter organization.
What do you say? Are there any frat house fun? Okay, good. What else? I think we kind of stumped them on this one. Ski-yo. All right, there's Joy Dean, Rosa Roundtree, AKA Always First.
George, we know you love the Q's, George. We know. You're 1911 brothers there.
All right. Was too poor to join one in college. That's Frazan. Okay. All right. Well, we will come back to the Greek letter societies perhaps a little later in the show. But in the meantime, let's get to know Charles. Charles, talk to us about your career in the Pennsylvania Legislature before you joined the Turnpike Commission.
Yes. So from 2010, honestly, it's about 2007, I first joined the Pennsylvania Senate. I served as the executive director and the chief counsel for the Senate Public Health and Welfare Committee, working on a lot of issues around public assistance, public welfare, what we call our welfare code here in Pennsylvania. And then immediately after that, I was recruited to go to Temple University, which is funny because everyone thinks I went to Temple, even though my entire family went to Temple. My father went to Temple Law. I went to St. Joe's. I had to buck the trend to go to a different Big Five school. And for a year, I served there as basically an in-house lobbyist. And then the senator I worked for prior became the appropriations chairman. And he didn't ask me, he demanded that I come back. And so I went back to the Senate to serve as his special assistant to the Appropriations Committee. And then in 2015, I came over to the commission.
All right. Now, you wear multiple hats there at the Turnpike Commission. You're responsible for compliance, legislative, and cultural affairs. Talk to us a little bit about what's involved in those roles.
Sure. So in the compliance area, it is your traditional chief compliance officer. The internal audit reports up to me. We have a great director of internal audit here named Joan Resick. So her shop audits all functions, internal, external of the commission, whether it's federal, state money, whether it's just ensuring that our contractors, vendors, and partners are basically meeting our standards and living up to the GASB standards. On the legislative side is more traditional tracking and tracking legislation, educating elected officials, whether it's federal, state, or local, on initiatives and efforts we have going on here at the commission. And then lastly, on our Cultural Affairs Department is the traditional diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives that we have going on here at the Commission.
All right, we're going to get into DEI a little bit more in a couple of minutes. Now, when I read your biography, I talked about the 3 degrees you have, a BA, an MBA, and a Juris Doctorate. And I noticed from your LinkedIn site that there's like a 20-year gap between your BA and your MBA. So talk to us about this mid-career return to education.
So in about 2010, when I went back to the Senate Work for the Appropriations Committee, I was actually accepted into an executive MBA program, but I just couldn't like justify the costs, like to go back. You know, I have law school debt, and I'm going to pile on more debt. But in 2018, I'm a member of the Pennsylvania Army National Guard, and in 2018, I deployed to the Middle East, and I came home with a different perspective on life of like, if you want to do something in life, just go and do it. So I upped and applied for my MBA. It was a tough road, but I got it done. So that kind of prompted the gap. It's my new look on life of like, just if a thought crosses my mind, I'm going to go and do it.
You know, that's really interesting. I've heard that from a lot of vets, a lot of National Guard folks about the change in perspective that happens after you return from a theater. Could you elaborate on that, Charles? Are there other things that changed in your life after having served overseas?
Yes, jokingly but seriously, you become more paranoid about like, so like I don't let my family use TikTok. I don't let my family use WhatsApp. Because I know from being overseas, those are the platforms that our enemies use to like collect data on us. I am far more, I tend to stay off my phone less because when you're over there, you don't have access to your phones. You don't have access to a lot of stuff. So you're required to talk to people directly. If I want to meet with somebody, it's more face to face. So, you know, meeting on Teams a lot here lately has been interesting to me because I prefer to meet with people face to face because you can actually judge their body language. You can judge, you know, their feelings. And that was one of the things we had to, when we dealt with, you know, partners over in the Middle East, it was always about judging their body language, judging, you know, the subtle things that you can't pick up over a Teams or a Zoom.
That's great. That's great. Thanks for that. So, Charles, you have a transportation family. You have you're married. You have 2 daughters, and your wife is actually the executive director of the Pennsylvania House Transportation Committee. And one of your daughters is very much into transportation. Talk to us a little bit about this transportation involved family.
So most families, like most couples on a Friday night on the couch, drinking wine or drinking beer, they might be watching Dr. Pimple Popper or just talking about their week. We talk about transportation stuff. We're talking about whatever's hot with us over here in PA around PennDOT or bridge tolling or any transportation related topic. But the flip side of that is when you have a 6-year-old that pays attention, she now can tell you whether you're speeding or not, what posted speed limits are. She's very adamant about seatbelts. She can tell you about mill and paves at the age of 6. So even as I was mentioning to you earlier, she's in 1st grade and she wanted to ride the school bus. And we were a little concerned because she's shy, but she wanted to ride the school bus because she's interested in transportation. And she was more interested in the bus than the actual experience. So hopefully we get her here in transportation space in the future.
Charles, we have a question here from Rush Wicks. Has there been regret in the Pennsylvania legislature regarding the financial challenges imposed on the Turnpike following the passage of Act 44?
For those members that were around when it was implemented, they now see the kind of error in their ways. But interestingly enough, there has been such turnover in the legislature that I could count on one hand the members that were here in place when they voted on it. So we spent a lot of time educating our legislative partners on Act 44 and Act 89 and the ramifications of that for the commission. We're exiting that time of year when our toll rates go up, and we have to educate them that our toll rates are commensurate with us paying off 30 years of debt. You know, we are $14 billion in debt. The overwhelming majority of that is a result of our Act 44 payments to PennDOT. But fortunately, we made our last payment in July of $450. So now we're coming out on the other side. As Mark Compton, our CEO, likes to say, the sun is shining on the Turnpike. We can now start doing stuff for our future, more total reconstruction, more access points, put in fiber optic in. So the sun is shining on the turnpike going forward.
That's great. Great to hear. Charles, one of the reasons we wanted to have you on Café IBTTA is to spotlight the work of members who are advancing racial justice, equity, inclusion, and meaningful opportunities in society. And you lead the Turnpike's Task Force on Racial and Social Justice. Tell us about how that task force came to be.
Yes. So after the unfortunate event surrounding George Floyd, Mark Compton, we had a conversation. He said, we should look at ourselves as a commission and see what we can do to enhance racial and social justice at the commission and in the community at large. And thanks to the work of Monica Ojo and Catherine Clements Jenkins here at the commission, we have a task force of Turnpike employees who volunteer their time on top of their regular job to ensure that we are promoting social and racial justice at the commission internally, and now we're moving more externally as well.
So, Kristen, I want to bring up that slide now and promote the fact that IBTTA has 2 Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Awards. And here's a little slide with some information about that. And last year was the first year that we had this award, and it was a great success seeing all the applications that came in. So this will be our 2nd year, and we really want to encourage everybody in the IBTTA membership to apply for this award. If you've got some good programs going on to advance racial justice, equity, inclusion, etc., we would like to hear about them. We want to share that good news with others in the tolling industry and recognize you for your great work. Charles, you in implementing the work of your task force, you have taken some specific actions early on, and those included changing some of your policies, one with respect to workforce civility and another with respect to hiring practices. Tell us a little more about that.
So the task force was initially charged with providing the executive management team here at the commission and our commissioners with recommendations on how we can improve racial and social justice at the commission. In the subcommittees, we have 5 of them, did make recommendations, and now we've transitioned to a permanent task force. Out of those recommendations, we now execute on a policy on civility. We're actually doing listening sessions, and then we'll also be doing a cultural climate survey. And then in concert with that, we've built a diversity demographics dashboard to track all of our applicants coming in, because one of the things we realize is that we need a larger funnel to bring diversity into the commission. We can have diverse employees if we're not going out actively recruiting and bringing in diverse recruits, whether it's a veteran, whether it's an individual with disabilities, an African-American, Latino American, a woman. We have to do a better job of reaching out into communities and showing that the Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission is a place that you can work at and feel honored and safe and feel like you want to be part of our team.
I'm watching the chat here, and I see it looks like you're going to get an invitation from Farzan Ahmed, who's the chair of our Diversity, Social, and Racial Inclusion Task Force. He says, would love to see Charles at our task force. So maybe we'll have you as a guest speaker for the task force.
As long as Monica gives me permission. Monica's the boss. If she gives me permission, I'll be there.
Charles, you mentioned data and dashboards in terms of how you're measuring your progress in advancing social and racial justice. Talk to us a little bit about some of the data that you've collected, what you learned, and how you applied that to your dashboards.
So what we've learned is we had a lot of data, and that data was compartmentalized, whether it was in a particular department or in another dashboard. So we are now moving toward, we've built 2 dashboards like immediately here, like that are like active now. So one is the recruitment and hiring of diverse candidates, and the other dashboard, with the assistance of the task force, our Transportation Equity Subcommittee Task Force, is a dashboard that tracks our DBE participation. So we have live data, so I can go in at any point and see see a specific project and see where the participation level is. And that allows us to be more proactive on the front end instead of us getting on the back end and saying, you know what, you didn't hit your minimum participation level, we're not going to approve this. But if we can see it live, we could engage our partner and say, why are you having trouble? Are there ways we can assist you in ensuring that you meet and or exceed your minimum participation level? So and that one specifically came right out of the Task Force on Racial and Social Justice, ensuring that we hit our minimum participation levels and or exceed them.
So one of the other things that you've done is that you are now specifically looking at individuals on the autism spectrum or people with other intellectual disabilities. You're also looking at persons who've previously been incarcerated as potential employees. Talk to us a little bit more about that.
So through the great work of Catherine Clements Jenkins here at the Commission, we are partnering with the Pennsylvania Office of Vocational Rehabilitation. So what part of that partnership are identifying college students who have disclosed that they have a disability and or if they're on the spectrum, and we're going to offer them an opportunity to come here as a commission and get meaningful professional experience that they can either carry on, and honestly, it's my hope that they eventually come work at the commission. On the reentrant portion of that, we partner with the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections to identify individuals that have re-entered society. And in Pennsylvania, a lot of individuals actually get CDL training, auto mechanic training, welding, electrical, plumbing, all the trade skills that we actually need here at the commission. So we have partnered with them, and we're going to move forward here in a couple months on an initiative of hiring re-entrants here at the commission, which traditionally in 80 years of Turnpike, we haven't done a great job of doing that. It's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to give an individual that's paid their debt to society a second chance.
Our guest today is Charles Duncan. He's the Chief of Compliance, Legislative, and Cultural Affairs for the Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission. We are taking your questions. We ask you to please write them in the chat function using all panelists and attendees or everyone. We've been talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion and chances, opportunities to advance that within toll agencies. Charles, you mentioned the pipeline. The challenge of making sure that the front end of the pipeline has a steady stream of candidates, of diverse candidates. And it's not always easy to accomplish that. Talk to us about some of the other things that you've done to get a more diverse array of candidates into your pipeline.
So the first immediate thing we did in the fall was when we basically went on a branding campaign into communities that we traditionally haven't gone into. So we had 3 of our commission employees, 2 Hispanic, 1 African American, and we did specific targeting into the African American community and the Hispanic Latino community to let them know that the commission is a place to work. We actually went in the Spanish speaking community with Spanish speaking newspapers to target that community. On the flip side, looking more like that was like the immediate need. And then looking toward the pipeline, again, through the great work of Monica Ojo, what she's done over the last 10 years, the CEO Internship Fellowship Program for diverse individuals is a program where during the summer, we bring in students from diverse backgrounds and offer them internship opportunities here at the commission. In one of our executive management teams, our CFO, our Chief Technology Officer, and myself were like, we should probably think about moving toward more of a financial legal model. Like when I was in law school, your second year of law school, you took an internship at a law firm or wherever you intended to work there, and then when you graduated, you typically went back there. So that's where we're transitioning the CEO intern program. And so where we are, instead of just saying, hey, thank you for coming work for us for the summer, you got professional experience, it is a summer-long interview for that student with the hopes that they will consider coming to work at the commission. And to even take it to another level, we traditionally, pre-COVID, we had about 8 to 10 students. During COVID, we were down to 6. This year, we'll do 3 to 6. But one of the things we've done is we've carved out 2 dedicated slots to Pennsylvania's historically black colleges university. One is Cheney University, the other is Lincoln University. So they have dedicated CEO internship spots with us to show to show that transportation is a space you can work in. You know, even when I was coming up, I didn't think transportation was a space you could go into unless you were an engineer or you were plowing snow. But there's so many opportunities, particularly at the commission, whether it's in finance, whether it's in compliance, whether it's in communications, that you could come work in transportation and move yourself around, whether it's locally, nationally, or internationally.
Charles, George Christopher has a comment here. I've seen great success hiring autistic candidates performing image review. Is that something you've experienced as well?
So yes, we are implementing something we accidentally did, almost inadvertently did. So the last time we had live, like in place or like in-person internships, we hired a student with disability, and they were one of the best workers. And they showed up on, as I like to say, show up on time, leave on time, and don't steal. And they met all the criteria of that. So we inadvertently did it. Now we're going to actually put an emphasis on it and actually execute on it.
Show up on time, leave on time, and don't steal.
That's the fundamentals of life.
now the first one and the third one makes sense to me. Talk to me about leave on time.
Don't say you have overtime, you're working overtime when you're not working on overtime. Don't steal time. I
got you. Okay, so that correlates to number 3. I got you. So somebody has a question about incorporating recovering addicts. Has that been part of your program?
I'm certain we will get there. As Catherine always yells at me, Monique yells at me as well. I wake up every morning with shower thoughts. So I'm always throwing stuff out there that we're chasing, because I do my best thinking in the morning when I'm in the shower. So I typically come out with a list of things for people to do after I log on. So I will add that to my list, and I'm already working them hard, and I know they'll be receptive to it and be able to execute on it.
You know, I do some of my best thinking in the shower, and this is going to sound like a dad joke, but to your people, you know, after you suggest these ideas, so they say, "Hey, Charles, you're all wet." Ah. All right.
Now you just gave him my idea.
Yeah. All right. Now, I'm curious about your branding efforts. You talked about it a little bit. Could you expand a little bit on your branding efforts?
Yes. So we specifically, and it actually ties into a meeting we have tonight. So we specifically targeted communities that we haven't traditionally talked to or spoken with or even engaged. And out of that is kind of what I've deemed like the Good Neighbor program, right? We typically only engage the communities along our system if we're doing a total reconstruction project, or there's a noise complaint, or they want a sound wall. But we should be engaging them even when we aren't doing anything, because guess what? We don't have all the answers. And if we're looking for diverse candidates, we should talk to the community leaders in those communities to give us recommendations. I have my great ideas, but it may not be the right idea for that community. And to that point, this evening, Mark Compton and I and Catherine Clements Jenkins were having a meeting in Reading, Pennsylvania with the Hispanic and Latino community leaders to tell us what we need to be doing to, 1, be better neighbors, 2, what's the best way to find diverse candidates, and 3, how to keep them at the commission. It's one thing to recruit somebody and bring them in. It's another thing to make sure they stay.
Anytime you start something new, it seems that let's say you introduce a new program or even a new technology, and you expect you're going to have your productivity going up, but initially that productivity goes down, or you stub your toe or you fail on some things. Can you talk to us about maybe some of the early growing pains of implementing some of these programs to advance racial and social justice? Where, you know, what were some of the maybe stub your toe moments where you learned something about how to improve in the future?
I mean, in full candidness, it was getting everyone in the commission to realize we are real about this. This is not a shower moment. This is not Mark who sent the note out just to send a note out. Like Mark is engaged. Mark sits on all the subcommittees. The CEO of the Turnpike comes to every single subcommittee meeting because this is important to him. And for everyone to see that this is important enough to Mark, now they realize, okay, I really need to take this seriously and be engaged. If a request comes from a subcommittee to a Department for Information, they know they have to respond, because guess what? Mark's going to hear the update on whether or not the information got back to that subcommittee or not. So that was the first hurdle, was getting people to really realize like this wasn't a feel good. Mark wants to feel good about life and like look good. He's dead serious about creating basically equity and equality throughout the commission.
Yeah, it's interesting. You should talk about having Mark serving on all those subcommittees. We had a speaker at the IBTTA Leadership Academy this year, Whitney Maddox, who is from she's the first diversity, equity, and inclusion manager at National Public Radio, NPR. And one of the things she talked about was the why. If you decide you're going to implement a DE&I program, you need to answer the question why. And you also need to know, all right, what is leadership's vision in this? How committed is the leadership to this program? And the fact that Mark Compton, the CEO, is sitting on those subcommittees sends a really powerful message.
And guess what? Everyone started showing up to every single subcommittee meeting. No one was blowing them off anymore. And again, the response, like my colleagues here at the commission are excellent. Everyone's fully engaged. It's to the point now that we have quarterly updates from what the task force is doing, amongst other things here. We have a project we call Reimagining Turnpike, and the task force is now part of Reimagining Turnpike. So we get quarterly updates to the executive management team on what is going on with the task force.
So Charles, a lot of people are going to be applying for IBTTA's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Award. You guys, of course, applied last year. What advice would you give to your toll agency and consultant and vendor colleagues about applying for this award? What do you think is most important for people to be focusing on and talking about?
Making a change and making a difference. We all have an opportunity. I wake up every morning and I quote Jack Nicklaus. Every day is opportunity to reinvent yourself. And every day you get up, you have a chance to reinvent yourself. You may not have done great in the DE&I space in the past, but every day you have the opportunity to wake up and reinvent yourself and learn something new. And if you do, you should be acknowledged and awarded for it.
Charles, thank you so much. And Kristen, put that diversity, equity, and inclusion slide up again. We really want to encourage all of the members of IBTTA to participate in this program. It was new last year. We want to get hundreds of applications this year. We know that so many people in this industry are doing so much to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion in their own organizations, or they're trying to learn from their colleagues about the things that they're doing. Charles, I'm going to pause for a minute and just make a couple of announcements, and then I'm going to come back to you for some final words of wisdom. So please, everybody, don't forget to complete the survey that you'll receive at the end of this Café IBTTA. We want to hear from you about ways that we can improve and other topics you'd like to hear about. Next week, our guest on Café IBTTA is Jeff Miller. He's the Executive Director of the West Virginia Parkways Authority and relatively new in that position. On April 28th, we have our quarterly book club discussion organized by the Task Force on Diversity, Social, and Racial Inclusion. The book is I Am Not Your Negro by James Baldwin. I mentioned the DEI award, and I think you've seen enough of that slide for now. Our next in-person event is the Road Usage Charging and Finance Conference, May 15 through 17 in Denver, Colorado. This meeting is being held in conjunction with IBTTA's Board of Directors and committee meetings. And please visit the website for details on all of our in-person and virtual events. So Charles, what final words of wisdom do you have today before we sign off?
Like I just said, every day is an opportunity to reinvent yourself and to learn something new. And if you're not learning something new every day, I don't know what you're doing. So go out and do it.
Charles, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on Café IBTTA. Thank you so much. And to all our viewers, be safe, keep in touch, and we'll see you down the road. Thanks, everybody.